Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Fortitude. And again, from Monroe, I guess it's Monroe where you guys are at, Louisiana, we have Andrew and Hallie Dye. Thanks for coming on, guys. I mean, this was awesome.
So fun.
Hey, John.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here.
So you all are my first couple on my podcast.
No pressure.
Yeah.
First couple. I didn't know how this was going to work out. You sound great. So everything. So you need to get, and your dad, Andrew, was really good on the first one. It was echoed. And I'm going to tell you, I was off my game on the second one when we recorded this week. I'd had some things happen at work. I'm a market manager for a company and I've got 3 business units, and we'd had some things go on. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of got me off my game, and I felt terrible because the first recording we had was awesome, but something was going on his side, and he was getting a lot of feedback, and so it was causing echo on my headphones, and I didn't really know what to do to fix it. So he gets on, he said, "Well, I could have done this last time."
That's like, yeah. So you had to record twice?
Yeah, we did it twice. He
doesn't have anything better to do. He's not doing anything. He's just sitting around, you know.
Hallie, make sure that your father-in-law is in a very good mood when he hears that.
That's right. I just have to make sure Andrew's, protected.
That's right. That's right.
Anyway, folks, welcome to, I want everybody to know, welcome Andrew and Hallie Dye. Hallie is the host of the Saltworks Podcast, and I live stream into your all's program because we were talking earlier. I am part of a community with a lot of guys that they know and very familiar with. That's been very influential in Andrew's life and his walk. Some wonderful, wonderful, tremendous men of God there in that church. And man, I am so honored that you all would be here. And Hallie, I just got to tell you, the only thing you're missing is video. I'm just going to tell you. I mean, I a lot of people like to just listen, but for some reason, I like that visual.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm hoping that your friend that you had on not too long ago that is on the audio video, but we need to get him to hook you guys up. Get you recorded.
Technically, he can't, but. We are moving towards.
That's the next step.
Video Gaines would help if he could.
That's level 2. You're already there, John.
Yeah. but we are. That is coming. Yeah, it's in the works. So
I will say this: it's a little more nerve-wracking whenever you have video.
True. Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, So have you ever been out to JJ's ranch?
Mm-mm.
So we were out at his ranch and. Sitting in his, what we call the meal hall. I don't know, I'm sure what they call it. It was, we sat there. We did not move, did not stop recording for 3 hours.
Wow.
While he told his story, his testimony.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
So, but we did Andy Roberts. Andy's been on. Yeah, I recorded with Andy out there. Fitz, Corey.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of those guys.
You've had some outlaws.
Yes, I do. But I tell you what, man, that Corey Taylor, I would storm hell with a water gun with that dude, man.
And you had Big Daddy on this week?
Yeah, well, it was last week. So his dropped the other day. Then I've got Brent Acord.
Mm-hmm.
You know Brent?
I don't know Brent, but I know about him because of Big Daddy.
His will drop on Monday.
Cool.
And then your alls will drop a week from Monday. So I'll send you the link and everything once again. We're up on Spotify now. You can get us on iTunes as well if you don't want to watch yourself. Because I hate watching myself. I don't like listening to myself. I think I sound hickey. I'm a redneck. I'm a hillbilly. You take it all. And
you really do. You sound great.
We know that battle, Yeah. And I always remind myself whenever I'm like, oh man, like why do I laugh like that? I'm like, well, everybody already knows my laugh. Like I'm just not used to it.
I think it's a great.
But everybody
laugh.
else has heard it. So
yeah.
All right, so I'm going to break something on this podcast, and nobody even knows about it except for Brent Acord.
Okay.
And I was alluding to it earlier when we were talking about the green room, just off the side of your all stage there at church. So, and hopefully your dad doesn't get me. I hope nobody hears about this before I get a chance to say something. But anyway, Brent, I'm going to blame it on Brent. Okay, we'll throw Brent under the bus. I got a big yellow bus out front, and I don't. But anyway, he would like to get a bunch of guys together. And I'd love if you'd be part of it if you could. He'd like to get a bunch of guys together in those chairs in the green room and have a conversation. And if Chad's with me, we've got 3 cameras that we can run in different angles, or we can have 2 set up. And then Chad's got a way that I forget what he calls that thing, and he actually walks around with it. And we've got enough mics that we can make it happen. But
Cool.
I thought that would be really cool.
That's a great idea.
And then I also wanted to get Corey and Deanne and JJ and Elizabeth, pull all the chairs away except for 2 on each side, and have them to sit down together and film that interview or that discussion with the wives and go through. And because where they're both were raised in Catholicism, my subject matter would be, what would that be like? What was it like for JJ and for Corey, and what it was like for, Deanne and Elizabeth on their side. And if they listen to this, they're going to be like, they're already going to know what's going to happen. But what we're trying to make happen. But JJ is all about it. I really haven't had a chance to talk to Corey and Deanne. So Corey, Deanne, I'm sorry. If you don't want to do it, just throw rocks at my truck.
Well, they'll do it. They'll do it. Man, I think it's a great idea. And I love, I wasn't a big podcast listener until really Hallie started doing it, but it's a unique kind of media because it's more of a conversation and less of a like a lesson.
It is,
and it's really neat.
It really is. So tell us. I know the story because I've listened to your podcasts about each other when you've had each other on. Hallie, you had one of your friends interview you. That was fantastic. Andrew, I first heard you whenever you were on with Hallie when your dad came on, and then I saw where Hallie actually had you on, and it wasn't. She had your name on there, but it was more of a couple, husband and wife thing that you all went through and told more about yourself. And that was great. I mean, it's very influential. But if you would just kind of tell us about how you guys met and, how and work through things to, Andrew, I'm going to get back to you as being a preacher's kid. That's part of the one of the things I want to talk to you about that I picked up on Bill's interview. But tell us a little bit of your background and how you guys met and the Saltworks started and all that good stuff.
You go ahead.
Oh, okay. We met, I think we had mutual friends that were dating. They're not married, but they were dating at the time. And I remember Andrew asking me to go eat after Sunday night church, back in the Sunday night church
That's
days.
Right. The good old days.
Yes. And so he
where did we go eat?
McAllister's, I think. Yeah. But anyway, so we did that, and we really kind of talked. And then our running joke is that Andrew liked to break up over the summers.
I don't think liked to break up is the way to say it, but
that's the way it was translated. But we joke all the time. The first time we were together in summer was when we were married, which is not true. But
not true. It was engaged. So that's the first time we were together.
No, but we grew up in youth group and going to school together, and we are. I think the benefit of our background starting that way is there's ups and downs of marriage. Obviously,
we've grown up together.
We have, and we've always been best friends, I think. And so that has been, I look back and I'm so grateful at the way that that we met and got to know each other in that capacity before we were even dating.
That's right. So, and I'm a year and a half older than you.
Yeah.
So, so I went to LSU, and we ended up really starting to date whenever I was there and you were at OCS, really.
Yeah, we long distance dated for 2 years.
Which long distance was good for us because it allowed us just to really get to know each other talking, Yeah.
What did you major in there, Andrew?
I was actually biology for my first 3 years, and I swapped to finance and finished in finance. So
you're like my wife, dude. You're not right. You are not right. You are not right.
Frustrating is he can, he's good at whatever. So it's not fair.
Well, no, it's not fair. I look at her spreadsheets and I see what she's doing in the numbers, and I'm just my brain wants to melt down or explode. It can't figure out which one.
Yeah.
So
He is definitely the numbers guy. I'm give me all the words, none of the numbers.
And I enjoyed both. You know, I liked the chemistry and the biology, and enjoyed kind of seeing how all that how God, you know, made all that happen. And
we actually got married in undergrad.
We did. We got married in college.
Kind of crazy, but we meet couples that say, oh, like we're so grateful, but we wouldn't recommend that. But like that thankfully was not our story. We have loved.
We have
every season of marriage, and I'm glad that we got married young.
Me too. Like I would. I don't know if you can say this. I would encourage everybody to get married young, just because our experience has been so good. You know, we were the first kind of our friend groups, both our friends groups, to get married, of course. And were you 20 when we got married?
Yes.
So she was 20 when we got married, and we were just kids, you know, and it allowed us. I mean, we've been through a couple of moves now, and you know, pets and kids and all that stuff, and I think that's been the most beautiful part, is that we've been able to grow up together. And I've seen, you know, praying over each other's ministries, and like seeing how she's just grown in the Lord. And man, you can't take it back. You know, it's like you've lived 100 years with somebody. And we actually celebrated, but we've been in September, we've been dating 16 years. So almost half of Hallie's life, I guess.
Yeah.
So
and still dating.
Yeah.
That's good. Don't ever stop dating. And
right.
and the agreements and the SOP, the standard operating policy that you all put in place with your marriage about arguments or not going to bed mad or hurt feelings, that's what saves your marriage. It really is. I mean, I've tried not to do that, and I can't say I've never done it, but I will tell you this: every time I've done it, I've regretted it, because first thing in the morning, first thing I've done is I woke my wife up and said, "I'm sorry."
I'm sorry. That's me.
The first thing I do.
That's me.
But I wish I could say I was perfect and that we never done that, but we.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, we and that's what I was telling you, John, before we started recording. But like, this is a date for us right now. It's hard to find dates when you have 3 kids. So we got our coffee, and there's no kids in our house. This is a date.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I appreciate being part of it. You know, I mean, I could go get
third wheel. You didn't even know it. You know.
Yeah. I could be the Uncle Si of the bunch. You know.
That's right. That's right.
Got to be one.
Yeah.
So Hallie, I know Andrew's background. You know, being raised, you know, his dad preaching and coming through the ministry. How about you? What did your childhood look like before you met Andrew?
Well, I'm the third kid. You know, there's always the legends about the third kid, and they're probably true, you know. Third kid, Andrew used to, you know, when we'd get in the car to drive somewhere when we were early married, he'd be like, Hallie gets in the car and falls asleep. And I'm like, I was trained to sleep in the car, you know, like that's third kid life.
Yeah, she married me so she would never have to drive again. You know?
No, my siblings are 8 years and 5 years older. And so, you know, you kind of just hit the ground running. You got to kind of keep up. And I think that created kind of an ambitious spirit in me, probably. Maybe not always a good thing, but I grew up in the church. I like to joke that I've actually been at North Monroe longer than his family. I think actually I don't know if I've told you this, but the week I was born, the oldest member and the youngest member were named Hallie. And so,
wow, I didn't know that.
North Monroe back in the day. And so, I don't know. I grew up with parents that were involved in church, and you know, just having a strong mentor in my mom who loves the word and to discuss the word, and you know, we'll still go walk in and get into what we're studying in the Bible. And she's still
starting new ministries at our church.
Yep.
All the time. Women's ministries.
She'll pull me into something she's cooking up, and she just both of them, both of my parents are still starting projects, which I love.
That's right.
Yeah.
She pulls us both into stuff.
Yes, both of us.
I try to stay away from a microphone. Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
So throw your mom and dad under the bus. Tell me who they are.
Benny and Sharon Evans.
And Sharon's been on the Saltworks too. Yep. So you could go listen to her.
I'm gonna go back and listen to that one. I may have to have you back on and talk about your mom.
Yeah.
Or that'll get your mom on. Say, Hallie, get your mom on.
She'd be really good. She'd be really, it's our turn to pull her into something.
Mom, if you're listening, it was John's idea, not me.
Oh my goodness. Well, that, you know, the one thing that I really, really appreciated about you, Hallie, was how you were honest about you and I actually connected a lot because I can't tell you, I'm going to tell you a little story. So it was 2 months ago. It was probably about a month before the WFR fall retreat. I came down and teamed. I was praying. I was walking in my building where I work, and I was praying. Everybody was there. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like everybody I called, anybody I tried to get a hold of to come on the podcast, nobody responded. It just, trying to connect with people through Facebook or not having a contact. Right. I get contact. People send me stuff on Facebook. I'm like, I don't know you, so I don't answer it. And I understand it. I get it, but so I was walking that morning and I said, God, I can't do this anymore. I said, I'm discouraged. I don't know what to do here. Nobody answers. And I said, I tell you what, God, I said, if you want me to continue this, it's yours. It's your podcast. I'm done with it. It's not mine. Whoever you want me to have on, I'll have on. But you got to work on the other side, and you got to help me bring them on. I can't do this on my own. I need your help here. Yeah. And I had sent Larry Bowles an email 2 months prior, a month and a half prior, and I hadn't heard anything. And he told me that he would come on. He said, John, I'll come on. Yeah, I'd love to do it. We talked for almost an hour on the phone the first time we talked. And so when it came time, I sent him the email, didn't hear nothing. So when I finished my praying and said amen, I walked into my office and flipped my phone over. Guess what was on there? An email from Larry Bowles.
Wow.
And this thing has exploded since then.
Mm.
Cool.
Who would ever thought I would have talked to Zach Dasher right now with the blind being released on the phone, that he would take time, or his dad, or even your dad. I mean, let's face it, North Monroe's not some little hick country church, and there's nothing wrong with the hick country church. I grew up in one. I can say that. I've got that. You asked me for some pictures, the ones I grew up in. But these men, I pastored a church for a couple of years. I understand, and it was just one of the small hick country churches, but I understand the demand on these guys to have a Jarrett Fix come on, to have a Jeff Garrett come on with his schedule with preaching and teaching. And there's a university, I'll think of it in a minute, that he does counseling through as well now. But having you here, you don't understand. I'm not going to say it that way. I hope you understand the blessing it is to be able to sit here and have this conversation with you on a date night. I do not take that for granted. But what I'm trying to say is, Hallie, I understand when I hear you say, man, I get up in the morning, can I do this? Mm-hmm. Am I in the right mind to do this today?
Yeah.
I came home and wasn't in my right mind when Bill came on to record for a Pastoral View. Yeah. But you just have to push through it, because then I think back, man, how many times does Bill Dye or Jarrett Fix or Jeff Garrett get up every morning and there's something going on with the kids, trying to get them to church, and something didn't go right here, something's on their mind, or there's problems in the church, but they still got to get up and preach the word. They still got to get up and push through.
That's right.
And I really appreciate it about you. And I need to shut up talking, because this is about you guys. But I said all that to say, tell me a little bit, Hallie, about how you work through that, and how you've learned to cope with that through how long have you been podcasting now overall?
A little over a year. I worked in a podcast before that, just for a short time, but actually doing my own podcast a little over a year. Now, I've been writing for almost 4 years. And so, I've written my whole life, but writing seriously towards a book for about 4 years. And to answer your question about how I work through that,
that's a good question.
I have to be honest with Andrew sitting here and say, not always well.
Yeah. It's a late night last night, John.
We're in a season. I wish I could go into what all's up in the air right now with the Saltworks and with my book, but hopefully there will be more to come on that soon. But we're in a place where we could get really excited because doors might be opening, or I can kind of play the self-protection Debbie Downer, where I don't want to get excited and put my hope in those things, because I've man, I've faced a lot of rejection in writing, and that's kind of what it takes, honestly, to write a book and to get something published. And that, but it doesn't make it easier. And as time goes on, my prayer with the book has been, Lord, I don't want to publish this book if this is not what you want. This has to be what you want. And I want it to be something that is actually life-changing for someone and is going to glorify his name. And, there are days where those two questions can be like self-crippling doubt. And then there are other days where it's like, I've got to practice the freedom of self-forgetfulness, which is a Tim Keller book, where I have to just take myself out of it. Like, it's his message, it's his plan, and I'm just the voice in this capacity. And with the podcast, it sort of became, well, if I can set up a microphone at my kitchen table and I can reach one person with the gospel today, why wouldn't I do that? So that's kind of, on my good days, that's kind of how I try to see it.
Yeah. But it takes like, the Lord uses people for like his hands and feet. And it takes, like, we have so many just interesting ways that he's encouraged Hallie, like even today.
Yeah.
Like, he'll just like,
it was a bad night last night.
It was a bad night last night. And like, it's just, because you can sometimes feel like, man, am I worthy to do this? For one, am I doing something wrong that it's not working out in how I expected or hoped? And ministry is a complicated thing because, it's like, it's all for the glory of God. And at the same time, you want to be doing your very best and being effective at the same time. And so
that's right.
It's this mixed bag, but it never fails that he puts somebody in place to lift Hallie up. And I can only do so much, as the husband. I can be like, man, you're doing great. And I try to, and speak truth at the same time. It's kind of tough, but these these people coming in and giving little, like you just did, John, like just these little encouragements, that's the Lord at work. And that's how he uses people to build people up. And it's more important than people think, especially in ministry. Because a lot of times, people can think, oh, their ministry is doing so well, or they're doing so good, or they're so gifted, or whatever. I'm sure they hear it all the time that they're doing well. But in reality, they have the self-doubt and things that everybody feels in whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's why, Hallie, I said, maybe once you get up where you can do video or whenever we come through, if you want to do it that way, maybe we could reciprocate, because that's really how you get started is, because, and I'll tell you what happened was, I saw a thing on Facebook where I guess you'd had Bill on and he talked about it, because when you first come out, I couldn't find you.
Yeah.
And so I sent Bill a text, and I could probably show it to you. I sent him a thing on Messenger on Facebook. I said, what platform is the Saltworks on? He replied back, I don't know what a platform is.
That's about right.
I think we quoted him as saying, this is awkward.
Yeah.
We got started.
That was his official quote. This is awkward.
But through that, he said, he was talking about the Saltworks, and he said it's the best podcast in my opinion. And I said, okay, if Bill Dye's going to endorse this, and at that time I didn't really realize that he was your father-in-law at that time, because I really didn't know that much about Andrew.
Right.
And so I just be encouraged, man. And listen, I've been there on those days. I just told you mine. But in those moments when we're at our lowest is when he can use us the most.
Man, there's no doubt about that. And we go ahead. How about James?
No, well, I was going to say, we just had this conversation this morning because last night was kind of like the world's melting kind of moment. And today we're like, okay, we've got our new faces on this morning. Like,
we've got a podcast to do today.
Good.
Yeah.
We have good things.
Yeah.
You kind of one of those 24-hour turnarounds. But one of the things that I was saying to Andrew today was I went to a breakout session about podcasting and writing, and the lady leading it said, who you are when it's not your turn is much more important than who you are when it is. And that that's so true, because more often than not, it's not going to be your turn. But how are you cheering people on? How are you walking in faithfulness? Because really faithfulness is what it's about. We just talked about this on the podcast recently, but success is not a fruit of the Spirit, but faithfulness is.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And peace is, and you can have those things. And for me, if no one listened to the podcast ever, then success would start to feel like, okay, you am I really making any difference if there's no listener at all? But for me, it's not even the success. It's, do I have the Lord's favor on this? And because of Christ Jesus, yes, we do.
Right. But even then, like, my mind goes from what you just said, John, about your faith is tested. I mean, that's James 1. And the funny thing is we read that we have a Friday morning Bible study with some guys. And that's where we were this morning. And, it's consider it pure joy when you encounter trials of many kinds, knowing that develops endurance. Mm-hmm. And it's other versions will say count it all joy or whatever. But somebody mentioned this morning, I think it was Parker Lee, but he was like, you have to, that word consider it all means you have to be in a situation where you're thinking about it. Like, you can't jump to that next distraction. Like, you have to kind of sit in it. And then these trials that develop this endurance, it's like a weightlifter. It's like you get used to that weight. And so it's like you have to go through something that tests your faith in order to get stronger. And that doesn't mean these little things. Like, that means it's going to be something that's so overwhelming to you that you are at your wit's end, that you have to lean on the Lord for in order for your faith to grow. It's not going to be this little bump in the road that you're good with. Like, it's going to be something that challenges your faith. Yeah. And I think in a way that's kind of what we've been going through together with these ministries is, you get to a point where it's actually good to wrestle with those things, because those are the moments where there's growth. And that's what you were just talking about.
Yeah. So I'm sure the book, The Gap, author William Dye. Yeah. I'm going to tell you something. I wish I'd have got a hold of that a couple of years ago. Actually about 3.5 years ago. And, Maybe the Saltworks will be the first place I actually talk about my testimony and how I put myself in the desert for 20 years when I resigned my church. So, but the WFR men's retreat played a huge role in it, and that's why my community, my heart, and all my boys are there where you guys are. JJ Sauce was my prayer partner, and he's been a prayer partner ever since. And it's been awesome. Anyway. Yeah. So Andrew, one of the things that I was going to tell you about with the book is I've been reading about David in the Old Testament, and I haven't read in the Old Testament for some time. I've stayed in the New Testament for about the last 3 years. I don't know how many times I've read it through, just because where I have come out of that desert, and I want to know what Christ said. So I'm starting to go back. But I think about David having to hide and run from the man that he loved more than anything. Mm-hmm. And every time he turned around, he was trying to kill him, or he'd say, okay, I'm not going to kill you. Then he'd try to kill him. Mm-hmm. But then whenever David finds out that Saul and Jonathan were killed, the anguish and the hurt that David felt is really no different than us, because when we get ourselves in these low places, we feel like sometimes, how am I going to get out of this? Mm-hmm. Because we feel like the world's against us, or we've got bricks sitting on our shoulders, and we really don't know how to lift out of this. What's going to be that factor? And then the next thing you know, God reaches down and he picks us up. Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And I'm all over the place here, because you all have struck. This is good. You all been good for me today. I've needed this in a
well, it's good for us too. Yeah. But it's like that word for endurance. I mean, you're saying it like it's like you have to get to where your knees are buckling under that weight, and the Lord lifts you up. And then it's not that weight is gone. It's just that you're used to that weight until another weight comes on, and then your knees are weak again. Then you lean on the Lord again, and that's how your faith is perfected.
Hallie, something that my wife what she said to me, she didn't say it to guilt me, but she was very true, and it convicted me. Let me put it that way. So I was telling her, I said, I'm only getting so many views. I said, but if there's just one, I'm like you, if there's just one that, that it affects or helps or whatever. And she looked at me and I mean, she was dead serious.
Yeah.
She said, why does it have to be just one? Why can't it be 1 million?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, it's going to be 1 million. I'm after 1 million. So I'm like, I'm not going to limit God anymore. But I understand exactly what you're saying, because I felt the same way. Man, it's not easy. I mean, I come in, if you'd look, I've got lights everywhere. I've got my bonus room tore all to pieces, and it's been this way. You all are number 7 podcast that I've shot this week. Number 2 today.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it drains you. It runs on you.
Mm-hmm.
But man, then I come on here with you guys, and it's just like a whoof. It's just a fresh wind, a fresh breeze, a new step and a new pep in my step.
Yeah.
Now, Andrew, I'm going to change a little bit of direction here now.
Okay.
So your dad talked about in a podcast about, everything that's going on and how the men's, the men's ministry and women's ministry, everything's taken off. And, there's so much going on, and the movement of God is just so strong there. And he says, man, it's like riding a tiger. You just got to get on the back and ride it, So,
yeah.
So with everything that Hallie's got going on with the podcast, being a writer and the ups and downs of that, because you guys are full-time parents. I saw your beautiful kids on there, but I'm sorry, no snakes, Kat. No. We're
No, I was the same way. I'm not touching that snake.
That's why it wasn't a close-up, because I was further back taking that picture.
Yeah, no way. We did have an incident where we had a snake in the house one time, and Bear threw it on Hallie. So that was
didn't touch me, but he did toss it. But he's still.
Oh my goodness.
Bear is still living.
He reads a lot of animal books, and so he figured it was a non-poisonous snake. I'm like, that's when we talk about you don't pick up any snakes.
Yeah.
So, especially in Louisiana.
It's Louisiana,
yes.
man.
So how do you? No, go ahead. This is great. So how do you? What's it like for you on the other side? I mean, you hold a full-time job.
Yeah.
And you've got kids running around every day, and you're trying to get mouths fed. You're trying to get baths done. You're thinking about, okay, what's John going to want to talk about? I've never been on this podcast before. He sent me, I've seen something, but what's this about? And your mind's going 1,000 different directions. How does it look there? How do you all kind of settle things down, when it comes game time?
It's kind of, that's an interesting question for me. I feel like the Lord's been really doing a work in me recently, because my thing right now is like, I'm going to, if he puts me in a spot to do something, then it's his will and I'm going to do it. And I mean, there were times when there's no way I would speak at something. I mean, I don't like talking in front of people. So my first experience with teaching was teaching 9th grade. And we had a great little 9th grade group. We had the youth pastor at the time was like, hey, I would love for y'all to go and teach this 9th grade group. And I was like, no way, I'm not going to do it. Like, I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I have to teach or anything like that. And it was printed out material, and we're teaching 9th graders. There's like 5 9th graders in there at the time. And some of those 9th graders are still some good friends of ours right now. Mm-hmm. But I remember teaching, my hands would be shaking, like teaching these 9th grade kids, And
they don't talk.
Yeah.
They're not answering.
So, but then, I mean, you kind of get used to that. Talking about getting used to a weight. I mean, the Lord really preps you for things. And so next thing you know, we move up with them to 10th grade, and the group has grown a little bit, and you get a little more comfortable. And then next thing you know, we feel the Lord's leading us to teach an adult life group class, which we've been teaching now for 3.5 years. Mm-hmm. And I look back, I'm like, man, 5 years ago, if you'd have said, Andrew, you're going to be teaching an adult life group class
or being on
a podcast with Hallie's always great, a great speaker, great talking. That's not really my gift mix, I guess. But
that's not true.
But if you'd have told me that, I'd been like, no way, no way. But like the Lord opens doors. And so to answer your question, for me, it's a balance of, we have to, and we talk about this sometimes, but we have to know what our ministry is. Mm-hmm. And we're committed to a life group. And that entails a lot with the young adult life group, because you've got kids stuff going on, you've got spouse stuff going on. Mm-hmm. At the same time, we're trying to safeguard our relationship through all kinds of things and time and spending time together and that sort of thing. So it's been a balance to me of knowing what our ministries are for life group, for morning men's Bible study, for the podcast and that sort of thing. And at the same time, being open to what the Lord wants us to do, like being on your podcast, you know.
Mm-hmm.
As far as settling things down, we've really tried. We're not the best at it, but we've tried to really say, okay, our ministry is a team,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to pray about our ministries, and we're going to be all in the ministry. And it's not just the Saltworks, and it's not just Life Group. It's like, this is our ministry as a family. And so kind of back to back, and praying out loud over each other is something that we've really started to try to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord's working through it. I mean, again, like I can tend to be an anxious person, believe it or not. It kind of shocks people when I say that sometimes, because
I'd never take that about you. You sound very confident to me.
Well, I can kind of seem like everything's good, but I can tend to be anxious. But like, I'm telling you, man, like over the past 6 months, like the Lord has given me a peace, just that He's in control. And that's why those verses in James are so near to my heart right now, because I feel like He's given me a peace and a joy that's not necessarily happiness, but a joy that's just kind of a calm in the storm in my spirit. Not to say that I don't want to get in the fetal position sometimes, and when kids are screaming and sick, and we're trying to figure out ministry stuff, or there's a struggle in the life group that we take to heart, because that stuff can be hard. But He surrounds us with, man, our community is amazing. I mean, you talk about, we have a few couples that are very involved in our lives, that pray for us, that check in on us, and we try to do the same thing with them. And man, you just see the Lord work through it, and you got to kind of be open to allowing Him to do that. For a long time, a guy like me, I'm like, no way, like, we're good. How you doing? I'm great. I'm great. I don't want you to know where I'm struggling, but man, just having, I have some older guys in my life that I lean on for sounding boards, and there's something about like an older person that has been through what you've been through, that can say, hey, this isn't the end of the world. I know Hallie has a very strong mentor in that regard. She said some things that really have stuck with us, but there's something about, they've been through it. It's going to be okay. Here's how you lean on the Lord. And at the same time, you have your friends that are constantly checking in on. It's a church. It's the church doing the work.
Well, and I can say this too about Andrew, because he's not going to say this about himself, but which, by the way, he always says, like, that's not his gift mix to speak and teach, but he is very good at that. I think he just has to fight nerves too, which I get that. I get nervous too.
I enjoy the study aspect of teaching, and it's growing on me as the Lord is building that endurance in me, the teaching part, but it doesn't necessarily come easy. I love the studying, and I love the making the lessons.
But also what I can speak to about his part of the Saltworks, and this is going to sound hokey to some people, but if you've stepped out in faith on anything, it's absolutely not. This has so much substance, but the encouragement that he brings to the table for me, even if he's not going to be on the podcast, a lot of times he listens to the episodes before they, are actually posted or published. And even just having that, okay, like he heard it, he knew it was biblical or whatever, having that support. But even, I mean, we're about to do some shifting with jobs this year. And so it really probably made more sense for me to drop the Saltworks and find a job situation. But Andrew really was the one that said, like, you can't quit. Like you have, the Lord's given you this and you have to do this. And that's a big deal, because that was so encouraging to me, because it made it not a project. It made it a ministry. It made it the whole reason we're here on earth, and that really is my ministry in the Saltworks. And so it was cool for him to encourage me in that same capacity that I want to encourage other people.
Well, I can only imagine. I know the time that it takes me. To contact people, because Chad, even though he's the producer, he doesn't have time. He's in Houston, Texas now, and he's trying to get his film funded that he's trying to shoot right now. And his wife just graduated Regent University, so she's taking her law boards or attorney boards and trying to work at the same time. So, I get it, man. And having 3 young kids, there's nothing like having mom at home if you can swing it. And and I know it's, I know it's tough, but my wife and I finally got to the point to where, she was able to work with her work. She started working from home when Chad started into middle school and has worked from home ever since. It's been about 19 years now, 20 years.
Yeah.
There's nothing that can replace that, having somebody, having the parent home. And if we had to eat cornbread or pinto beans and cornbread, for 5 or 6 days a week in order to make that happen, looking back on it now, that's what I'd have done. I'd eat potted meat, bacon, sausage. I don't care what it would have taken.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have
wore
out
those
clothes.
things, so.
Hey, I do too. So
I'm like a gas station food guy. Like
if here's the thing about Andrew, he every meal he has, he's gonna say, that was the best meal I've ever had.
But I mean it.
But
I mean it. I mean it. I just,
he's super fun to live with and super fun to cook for. So,
well,
all right, now Andrew, you got to make the disclaimer. Do you have restaurants and gas stations? Is that what
we do? So Hallie's family has restaurants and the Daily Press restaurants and gas stations. Mm-hmm. I was a gas station food guy way before that. So I'm a Hunt's Brothers pizza guy, roller grills,
That's why you married me. Truth's coming out.
That's right. I saw Hallie and I was like, man, gas station. Hallie, I have, gas station food and a wife. So
hey, listen, this is really cute. So there's a guy I watch on, he's out of Mississippi. He's called Yalt. And it's David Ellis. He trailed hogs for us. Well, he's got, and you can't make this up. His wife's family, now he traps wild hogs, right? So his wife's family owns the Piggly Wiggly.
Oh,
That's
really?
So funny.
That was my dad's first job. Piggly Wiggly.
Oh,
no, maybe KFC.
I don't remember which one came first. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So,
I'm taking
you're good, brother. You're good. And I think and here's one of the things I really want people to hear is, I'm 59 years old. My wife and I are empty nesters. We have, we both still work, and we have grandkids. They're in Germany right now. Mm. But what I want, my audience is not all 50 years old. Mm-hmm. They have young kids at home, and they're trying to do extra things, and they want to have a platform. And that's what my podcast is about, is to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ and to bring encouragement and hope to others that want to start a podcast or a platform, that are trying to, maybe a wife or a husband wants to start a podcast, but maybe the husband or the wife, the spouse is not supportive, or maybe one is listening that wants to be supportive but doesn't know how, because when they go to podcast, when the husband or the wife goes to podcast, guess what? The spouse has to take care of the kids then. Right. And so maybe they've got to cook dinner that day, or maybe they're loading a dishwasher, or maybe they're doing laundry, maybe they're running kids to ball or to cheer. Yeah. So there's more to this than just sitting down and talking into a microphone. Yeah. It's so unbelievable.
It's a lot.
It is. And I don't know how you're doing 7 of them a week. Yeah, I don't know.
Yes,
that is a lot. Running a marathon a day.
I mean, this is hard, and it doesn't look like this every day. I think for us, the way that it works right now is the family. Well, the family always has to come first.
Exactly.
That has to be the first thing. If he can't, like, if I have a recording and somebody's sick at school, because I do try to keep my recordings during school hours, because all of our kids are in school, and that's one way we protect family time. But like they're about to be out on break this next week. So I put my head down and did all my editing and social work yesterday, got that prepared. That way, like, I can just be home and present. So that sort of scheduling. But, if for some reason someone was sick and I had a recording and Andrew couldn't go, then like that recording's not going to happen, and I truly believe like the Lord's going to line that back up if, you know what I mean? If that was supposed to happen.
Well, and your home is really your first ministry, and growing up as a pastor's son, that's how my dad viewed it. We always, even whenever he had to be somewhere for a church function, we always knew that he would almost, rather be home with us. So it was, he made us feel like, and I know his mindset was family first, even as a pastor of a church, which is going to be really hard to do. you know.
Now, look, I'm trying to keep this to an hour, but there's still a couple questions. I don't know how fast we can do it, but I don't want to take. I want to be very respectful of your time. If you'd rather,
we're good.
If you'd rather come, okay, you're good. So, Andrew, I'm glad you segued.
We're good.
I'm glad you segued into that, because that's my next question. Because one of the things that I heard you say when Hallie had your dad on is you talked about how he protected you all. Now, I got to be honest with you, brother. I wasn't very good at that. And one of these days, there are some things that I do talk about, but it's off camera, it's off mic, of what God revealed to me, what he showed me when I come out of the desert and I was there at WFR.
Mm-hmm.
So when I listened to what your dad done, I'm like, man, and I've heard Chuck Swindoll. I listened to him, and your dad and I talked about that. He was my Chuck Swindoll, Charles Stanley, Adrian Rogers. Yeah. Those were my pastors back in the day. Those were my mentors through the radio program, because we didn't have YouTube. We didn't, we didn't have Google back then.
That's how he was. It was radio programs with Swindoll.
Yeah, Yep.
That's
and
crazy.
So you go back and you listen to that, and how. Even Chuck talked about, I was telling your dad, I went back and I listened to a podcast that Chuck did, and one of his sermons, how him and his wife pulled their kids in after 10 years and apologized to them in front of a counselor. And then they got up and left, and the counselor worked it out with them. They didn't let the kids say it's okay or anything. They weren't allowed to say anything. But then I hear about what your dad did, and I'm like, where was Bill Dye 23 years ago?
Yeah.
But it wasn't meant to be. I wouldn't trade where I'm at right now for no amount of money. No, because I got my doctorate. I don't know if y'all knew that.
No.
Yeah, it's from the School of Hard. Yeah, it's from the School of Hard Knocks. It's the degree that hurts.
An online degree.
Yeah, it's the degree that hurts. Now I do have a little bit of college, but that's a long story. But one thing I want to talk about, I hear from you, Andrew, and then Hallie, I want to come back to you about something else that you're doing that I'm very intrigued about hearing more about. What was it like growing up as a preacher's kid? How well, what all did your dad do and your mom to try to protect you? Because you live in a glass house when you're a pastor. Yeah. And your kids aren't allowed to make mistakes. They're not allowed to be kids. Yeah. And I'm very curious to see, from your perspective, how your mom and dad did that, and how it affects you today, and how you live today. And I'm kind of going another direction with your dad now being the preacher of North Monroe, a church that a lot of people would call it a mega church today, because of the size of it. How do you balance that, and what do you remember about that, and how's that affected you, and how you treat Hallie and your kids, and how you operate your own home today?
Yeah, so good question. So my dad would be the biggest influence on my life, but the way that he did it was, my dad is who he is on the pulpit, and that's who he is at home. Like it or not, that's how he is. And Dad he's got his story to tell, but he was pulled out of darkness, and came to know the Lord. And so, but he's just real. He was a real guy. He is a real guy. And I feel like there wasn't ever this expectation for us to be perfect. Like he was going to be real. His kids were going to be real. He was going to discipline us in a biblical way, and he was going to love us, and and Mom was the same way, and they were always on the same page. And there was never any of this. We were totally protected from any kind of church problem. Mm-hmm. They never talked bad about a single church member in front of us. They never talked about a church problem in front of us. And it was, quite frankly, I was an adult whenever I realized that there's even stuff that goes on in a church, and in a lot of ways, you're almost like a local Texas high school football coach, like you're expected to be places and do things. And when you're doing stuff, you're going to have people that are all for it, and you're always going to have maybe a couple people that aren't for it. And people, there's, whenever you have people, you're going to have hurts, and you're going to have problems. And, but that's the church, and that's the beautiful thing about the church is it's people, and so my dad, he always loved the church, and he always loved church people, and authentically, and that's how he raised us. And so I love the church, and I look back at things that he would do. Like I grew up with the old school Christian music. I grew up with Keith Green and into Rich Mullins and Amy Grant, and Stephen Curtis Chapman was a big
Jars of Clay.
I'm still a Jars of Clay guy, So like I grew up in that world, man, and like Salt. You can look at a timeline of the music that I listen to. I'm still a huge Keith Green fan, and so we grew up with my dad not just saying it, but doing it. I mean, he's reading his Bible at home, and Mom's got her Bible out at home, and we're listening to those old just scripture filled Christian songs, and that has definitely affected the way that we parent.
I think too, when you were saying the part about like I forgot exactly how you worded it, but that y'all were allowed to be kids and you were allowed to mess up. I think what I also see in your dad now is that I know has always been present there. I mean, it's something that I can see longevity in him, but like, he's not afraid to fail.
No, he
doesn't think he has to be perfect, even though he's a pastor and he's on the pulpit, and he will admit it faster than anyone and make that repair quickly. And he doesn't expect himself to not be human just because he's teaching the gospel. And I think not only did that make room for y'all to have that allowance, but it was actually modeled too. That's
right. And so being a pastor's kid today, like there's a lot of freedom in hearing my dad say, man, I'm a vagabond. I'm going to go wherever the Lord tells me to do. And I'm going to preach his word. And it is what it is. Like I'm going to take what people say with a grain of salt and love them. And there's a lot of freedom in that for being a pastor's kid. You can walk into a room and kind of what you do is you adopt that same mentality from whoever's discipling you, and even though maybe we haven't had those conversations, watching his actions and watching him do it allows the kids to do it, and so that's one thing that we've adopted is like, we're not going to talk bad about the church in front of kids, and we're not going to let them know that if there's anything going on in a church or there's a problem with somebody or something like that. And
yeah, I don't think people realize that when you say, oh, I wouldn't have done, I mean, take a kids program or whatever. I mean, I wouldn't have done it like that, or I didn't like that, or I wouldn't have arranged it this way. I mean, just hearing those critical things at the dinner table or in the car teaches your kids like, oh, there's some dissent in the church already, even though they might not be able to voice that. And that might be a small example, but hearing those sort of things teaches like, well, I don't really know if that is a wise person that's in that position, but like, we want our kids to hear us speak well of it all the time. And we do, like, we really, it's become something that you can't hide. And so it just becomes like, that is how we walk, whether the kids are there or not,
That's right. I hope I answered your question.
No, you did. Now, your dad was saying that three of you all are deacons or in the church. So he said is it your younger brother or older brother that's up in Vermont?
That's my older brother. That's John.
And I said, Bill, did he go up there? Did he not want to be a deacon that bad? Did he have to move that far away?
I'm out of here. He just loves syrup, He don't want to get that maple syrup. No, he's loving it up there. He loves the seasons. And
see, the reason why I ask you is I want other people to know that not everybody's a John Garrett as a pastor, because I didn't know any better, man. I didn't have a mentor. Helping me through that time frame of my life. And I didn't let my kids, I wanted to let my kids be kids, but at the same time, I was always trying to make sure that they didn't do anything to make the pastor look bad. And I'm just going to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's the challenge. And look, we can feel that way as parents.
I was going to say that can be a pitfall of parents
anybody.
Anywhere. I mean, you go to Target and you don't want to look like the parent that didn't discipline. I mean, there's people that fall.
Too.
Yeah.
And it affected Rich. I mean, he's the oldest, and one of these days I'll be able to sit down with him and apologize to him and talk to him about it. So, but no, you answered it perfectly, man. And I wanted to do that not only as an honor to your dad and your mom, but to you as well, Andrew, and to you, Hallie, because they're preachers' kids, PKs. I hate that, but they don't always have the best reputation. And to me, it always aggravated the daylights out of me. With, oh, that's especially if it was a girl or a female. Oh, that's a PK kid. That's the preacher's daughter, and that is not right. That's not fair to put that stigma on every girl that is a pastor's kid. That's not fair. Yeah. But I appreciate that about you all. And I just want I want it to be a great encouragement to you. I know you're not perfect, but I've listened to the podcast where you've had to get up in your podcast with your dad. Andrew, you had to get up and go to one of the children that were homesick.
Yeah.
Don't change that in your podcast. Don't change being real. Yeah. That's just like me. There's very little I edit out unless somebody actually says something that they did. Like Larry, first time I had Larry Bowles, he said where he wanted to live, where he was living, and where they lived in Athens. And later on, he said, "Hey, John, can you take it out?" My wife got mad at me. Not really mad, but she said, "Did you really get on there and just tell everybody where we live?" Yeah. Because he's the only named official contributor to the Unashamed podcast. He's a repeat there, and
that's a great podcast, by the way.
It is, but when you watch the WFR live stream, if they put the camera angle, Rob and his behind, preaching the gospel, brother, preaching the gospel. People want to come after you and cause you harm. It makes no sense to me unless you read the New Testament and see what they did to Christ, and it makes perfect sense.
That's right.
But I digress. Once again, I digress. But so I don't edit anything out. That will not get edited out because it's real. Yeah. And that doesn't bother me. If one of y'all need to get up and go get a cup of coffee, I don't care.
Okay. That's the beauty of the podcast. I'll tell you, when I first started, now I'm a podcast guy, like for the past year, once I started doing Saltworks, I listen to all kinds of podcasts, but that's one thing. When I was listening to my truck one day, and I was like, I think Hallie, it was a Saltworks podcast with like maybe one of our friends that was on there. And I was like, something happened. And I was like, oh man, I shouldn't have said something. And I talk on the phone a lot on my truck. Like when I'm driving, that's when I make a lot of phone calls. And for a second there, maybe I was tired, kids were up or something. I was like, I'm not on the phone with these people. Like, it was almost like you're sitting in the room. When you're real like that, it's like you're sitting in the room. And it's a friend of ours that we've had at the house before. And I was listening. I was so into that podcast that I was like, that's having a conversation. And that's when I realized that the podcast is a totally different type of media. It's not like watching TV. It's not like listening to the radio. It's like you're having a conversation. So those things that you're talking about, like a dog barking or getting a cup of coffee, that makes it even more authentic. And people want authenticity.
They do. Exactly. I always tell guests, somebody will come on and maybe I stump them with a question or something that we, wasn't really in their story, or maybe they're trying to look for a specific quote they wanted to read or something, and it's taken a minute to find it in their notes. If it's in a really long pause, it's going to make that person feel like, okay, that didn't make me look great, I'll take that out. But for the most part, I always tell guests, like, I'm going to leave the pauses where you go, I don't know, because it tells the listener, I'm sitting at this table. Like, I am here present while they're processing what they're going to say. And that makes you feel like you're a part of it.
Yeah, it does.
It really does. So Hallie, I want to segue back to you now. You also said that you are, I may have misunderstood or heard it wrong. Reconciliation, you have something to do with reconciliation. Am I right? Or is that part of your ministry?
So, yes. And so basically I went on a retreat for the first time, over a year ago. And I don't want to give anything away. It wasn't through our church, but I don't want to give it away for that church. That they were coming around and they were going to say something specific to me. And because it wasn't my church, I was kind of like, I think a little bit wanting to be in a place where it was like, okay, I've got no distractions. I don't feel like I need to serve. Like I can just be here, not that I would have had to, but you know how it can just kind of be in your home place. But it also had this other element of like, well, what if this isn't personal and that's going to make me feel unseen by God? Because I think that's something I've wrestled with a lot is like, is your favor on this? Like, are you wanting me to do this? And so it came around to me, and the word that they gave me was, you're a minister of reconciliation. And so, I mean, that is something that I'll be processing for a long time, because I think that can kind of spin into a lot of different directions. But at the time, my job was content manager and team manager at the company I worked for. And so a lot of that is reconciliation, making sure everybody has what they need. Is there a problem? Let's reconcile that, whether it's between people or whatever that looks like. Sometimes that can be thought of being a peacemaker, not keeping peace, but going and building good foundations, in relationships. And I do think that that's an important part of our walk as Christians. But really the ministry of reconciliation, what I've learned in scripture is that it is the fact that we are reconciled through Jesus Christ to the Father. And part of that ministry of reconciliation, obviously, is to go out and make disciples, but it's also to view those new disciples as the new creation that they are. And that is a big part of the Saltworks, because my vision for the Saltworks is I love Q&A, guest-based podcasts, because of what we said. You feel like you're sitting at the table. You feel like you're a part of it. That ministered to me so much in a time where I'm changing diapers and wiping noses and not, getting to have adult conversation. Those ministered so much to me. And so I know the importance of that. But my vision for the Saltworks was, what if, yes, people who have written books and people who, might go on a music tour or whatever, but what about also the people who, have led this Wednesday morning Bible study for 40 years, and that might not stand on a stage, or they might not write a book, but they have a story to tell, and they have the story of faith. And those stories are so important for us to hear, because the idea of the Saltworks is it's kind of can be a place where salt is refined, but also a job that's viewed as drudgery. And it's in the unseen places where God is working and refining us. And the idea is that every person is in the Saltworks. Everyone has a story. Everyone can live boldly for Christ right where they are. And so part of that ministry of reconciliation is, yes, I want people to reconcile to the Lord, in whatever capacity that means. Maybe they've known him, maybe they're meeting him for the first time, but also to be reconciled with how they're seen in Christ, so that they can and will live boldly. And that turns into making more disciples. And so that to me is a big part of the Saltworks.
Yeah, that is amazing. And I'm so thankful for that. So you're doing speaking too? Are you still doing speaking engagements?
Yes. Right now it's mostly smaller things, which I really love. I really love to kind of be with a group where I can ask a question and people can kind of answer. But I really don't say no much unless it's conflicting with family, stuff. Like we said, that family always comes first. But I love to go speak at women's stuff. And I think the next thing I'm doing is at our mom time at our church, and recently got to go speak to a Christian organization in the pharmacy school here in town. And that was really fun and different. And so, just saying yes and kind of following where the Lord leads in that way right now.
I tell you what, I'm glad that that's happening, because the more you do that, I love listening to you. You both of y'all have a very pleasant, easy listening voice. And again, I want to be a huge encourager to you. It's amazing. I can't wait till you're able to get your video up and going. And With us, when we roll in, I'll try to remember to send you a picture of a back scene that JJ sent from his ranch. We have pack out systems that you can get them. They're made by Reggie. You get them at Home Depot, and it's stackable toolboxes. And we have 2 of those. They're 3 stackable that are loaded with recording equipment, with microphones, cameras, you name it, all of our extension cords, everything we bring, batteries. Then we have duffel bags that has all of our tripods for all of our lights that we put up. We've got cords going everywhere. It looks, when we rolled in to WFR and recorded with Derek McQueen, those guys were shocked when they saw, because they'd seen the production from Duck Dynasty, and they saw, when they come in, people come in, and film them or whatever. And when they saw what we had done, they were like, wow.
That's cool.
But you're right. It takes about 15 minutes to break down, but it takes an hour and a half to 2 hours to set up and get your cameras right, your lighting right, and there, making sure that all your microphones are working right. And it's,
so we may have to pick your brain on the video equipment.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, I can get you in touch with the guy that can help you. And
okay.
Chad is awesome at it. He's really, really, really good at it. I think at one time, Derek and Rucker were there at WFR, were wanting to talk to Chad about setting their podcast. I don't know why he doesn't do that, because he could probably make more money doing that than what he's doing right now, because he has to have something that allows him the flexibility so that he can go and act, or be a associate producer on a film. So that's seasonal, and he goes to all these fast music, or not music festivals, but film festivals. So there's a lot to it. I totally get it. And when you're trying to do it there in your house, if you don't have a home to dedicate to that, a room to dedicate to it, and then every time you go to shoot, you got to tear up and set down. I've done that.
Yeah.
I started in my garage. In some of my older videos, you can see my wife took a bedroom in our house in Charlotte and gave it to us because at that time I was doing the Shelter Hole, which is evangelical, and the Fortitude side was more on the business side of things. And we just combined everything to Fortitude because I wanted to go totally evangelical and Christ-centered. But one side of it was a Shelter Hole, and we just turned the cameras around, and the other side would be Let's Talk Fortitude, and we could just switch lights around. And so there's a lot to it. And whenever I first started doing it, I'm like, are you kidding me? Now, this is easy. I got to be honest with you. This is easy. Yeah. I love this. As far as I'm concerned, if you all would be here visiting, I'd have you on a laptop in there. And me and my son did this. Chad, he was in here where I'm at, and I was in the other part of the house. And we
still do it the same way.
Did it the same way.
That's funny. That's what you never.
Well, it was easier than trying to set all that stuff up, because all their stuff's in. We still have all their stuff in one of the bedrooms. We took a bed down, so they don't have to pay $300 a month for storage, trying to save them some money. So, we had everybody packed in here, and it was just easier to do that. Yeah. So, hey, listen, I got a couple questions for you. Now, they're just quick fires. Yeah. Andrew, be very careful. This could cost you a lot of money.
I'm if you say before I talk.
Think it out very good. And if you could view a sunset with Hallie anywhere in the world, where would it be?
My back porch.
Have you been watching my podcast?
No, but I will.
So I told your dad. He said the same thing. I kid you not.
Really?
Yeah, said the same thing.
And his hasn't even been released yet, right?
So you couldn't have known that.
Nope. So you couldn't have known that. Larry Bowles today said that his was the front porch holding his grandkids. 99.9% of the time, it's the back porch.
Are you serious? Wow. So we drink coffee if we can in the mornings on our porch, and then in the evenings we spend a lot of time.
I wonder if we polled men and women if they'd answer the same. Because
Allie's in the house all day long.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. We love our back porch. We start there and end there most days. But there's something about being on someone else's porch where your laundry's not inside.
I don't even think about that.
Yeah.
That's the male mentality, dude.
Yeah.
We're saving money, and it looks good.
That's right.
But maybe that means we're making a happy home.
It does.
So.
It is.
So, Hallie, for you, what would it be? And you don't have to say back porch. I mean, what were you thinking whenever you were, when I asked the question?
Well, I love a coastal place, but right now I'm feeling the mountains because it's getting to be the fall time. We could see some, color change. So I'm going to go the mountains somewhere. Yeah.
That's what I meant to say.
So, favorite vacation spot, lake, mountains, or ocean?
Oh, I'm an ocean guy, man.
Yeah.
You could put me on ocean. I just surf and eat seafood and be happy.
Mm-hmm.
So I did 10 years in the Navy. And whenever I'd come in, go on leave, everybody said, let's go to the beach. I'm like, go to the beach?
Man.
I live on the water.
You don't want to. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
That's right.
I'm sorry, Hallie, what were you going to say?
Oh, no.
I'm going to let you go first.
No, I was going to say probably beach. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, right now I'm in the mood for mountains, but yeah, ordinarily we'd be beach people.
So if you could have every Sunday your favorite Sunday meal after church, what would it be?
Well,
Chick-fil-A.
just because you
can't have it.
No, I really like home cooking. Anything with cornbread. In the words of Bill Nye, Hallie can put the cornbread away.
Yeah, when we first started dating, my dad, one of the comments was, when we first started dating? Yeah. I was like, man, Hallie can really put the cornbread away.
You said it.
Oh, I said it.
You said it first. No, Andrew was going back into the kitchen. We fixed plates around the island and then sit down. It's not like home style, where you pass it. And so if there's cornbread, I'm going to save room for another piece of cornbread. And so Andrew was going back. And so he brought some back and announced to the room, like, Hallie can put the cornbread away. And I was like, okay, you've grown up with brothers.
Yeah,
That's
was a
not
compliment.
a compliment.
That was a
in
compliment.
my world. Yeah. So Bill still quotes that.
But Hallie's a soul food girl.
Yeah,
she likes the soul food. And I would say one of my favorite meals, and I probably wouldn't have said this like a few years ago, but that roast that you make with the peppers in it.
Oh, it's like the Mississippi mud roast or something, like pot roast, or I forget. But it's you put like is it arancini? Is that how you say peppers or whatever?
I don't think so. I think that's
Italian. I think that's
appetizer.
frozen.
Yeah.
Fried. Yeah.
Rice.
What is it?
Peppercini.
Something
like that.
No,
I like that. And then I'm a huge Hoppin' John fan with cornbread. Have you ever had Hoppin' John? Hallie makes it.
That is.
Hallie makes it for New Year's, but it's like black-eyed peas with sausage and bacon and onions.
Kind of think of red beans and rice, but black-eyed peas and bacon instead of red beans.
But Hallie makes
anything with bacon.
Man, it's so good. And then so she started doing it on New Year's, and now we do it for my birthday too, which is coming up. So that's my favorite. And my mom makes good cornbread, by the way. My mom does make good cornbread.
Yes.
So shout out to Amy Dye.
Yes.
She's a baker. She makes bread and has chickens.
Oh my gosh.
I think if I could eat my favorite meal, if I could go back and get my grandmother's biscuits and gravy and either fried squirrel or rabbit, or it could be homemade sausage, any breakfast stuff with a big old hard fried egg with the yolk broken lace all around it where it's been fried for 45 minutes and it's like rubber. I mean, that's my childhood. That's what takes me home. And
that's right.
Or chicken and dumplings, but the dumplings can't be fluffy. They have to be the thin, chewy.
See, I like the fluffy.
You like the fluffy ones?
Not fluffy because they're still dense, but they're thick. My mom that's how my mom makes them. It's however your mom made them,
Yeah, I grew up with the thin too.
Yeah.
Like those.
Yeah. Either way, man.
Man, I could talk food. That's what we need on a fooditude podcast.
Well, you are in the food business. I don't know how you stand. I figured the last thing you'd want to talk about be food.
No, I can talk about food.
It'll be the best meal he's ever had.
That's right.
So I do want to ask you a question. What is your favorite pizza place? And not Hunt, okay, Andrew? We got to go somewhere. Oh, you can have a favorite gas station pizza, but other than that, what's your in Monroe, West Monroe? What
my favorite gas station pizza? I got to say Daily Press, but Casey's. If you ever had a Casey's pizza, Casey's is the best gas station pizza.
Mm-hmm.
The best pizza in the world is Johnny's. So, and the nacho cheese.
We are a house divided on that.
Hallie grew up eating Johnny's, so she's
burned out.
She's burned out. She's been burned out for 20 years.
No.
So I'm not. But
man, I like Johnny's. That's where I go when I come in. I always got to go to Johnny's, but I don't get it every day, so it's a treat for me.
That's
it's like
right.
a favorite place at the beach that you don't get every day.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
Do you dip it in the cheese sauce?
No, I've never gotten the cheese sauce.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you got to try that next time. That's the delicacy.
That's a Monroe tradition.
I tell you what, I did get the kitchen sink one day when I was there. Oh my goodness. Good. I'm like, are you kidding me? Can I get about 12 of these to go?
Mm-hmm.
We used to get the take and bakes and bring them to Baton Rouge.
They're not the same, but they're as close as you can get.
Yeah. So good.
So Andrew, how many restaurants do you manage or are you taking care of?
So I work for the oil side of the business. Daily Press. Okay. Daily Press is the retail division. So we're actually like her family's business is like an oil distributor. So we supply about 100 stations throughout the state. And then we have 4 daily presses. That's the retail division. And so it's sandwiches, spuds, salads, soups, and that sort of thing. And so it's a really, really neat, clean environment and really focused on food. Mm-hmm. And her dad kind of came up with the concept and it's done really well. So her family, awesome. Her dad and her family. So
I have to make sure I visit one of them whenever I come back down.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We'll take next time you come to town. Let me know and we'll go check it out.
Okay, I'll definitely let you know when I come in. Maybe we can grab old JR and we'll take the old man.
Hey, JR.
That would be a good time.
JR does some HVAC work sometimes for us, and I pay him with Daily Press gift cards. So he loves Daily Press.
Yeah.
So yeah, I asked him to come on my podcast and tell his testimony. And he was real reluctant at first. He said, you got to work with me. And I said, look, because we spent hours sitting in his living room talking when I was there. And I got to meet Laura, a wonderful lady. I love her to death, man. Great people, man. I mean, they're just wonderful people.
Yes.
And when he started telling me some of his story, I wanted to ask him, but I knew he wouldn't be real comfortable. And finally I just said, you know what, I'm going to ask. And I told Jared I was going to ask his dad, and he said, John, he's got a great story if he'll come on and tell it.
Yeah.
And so will you all agree to come back sometime?
Oh yes,
sir. Absolutely. Yeah.
We'll find another subject and we'll talk about it. We'll find a Bible subject. We'll find something. We'll just get on here and talk about nothing, you know.
We'll talk about food. I've enjoyed it so much. And let me tell you, you've tapped into a good group of guys here in North Monroe. I mean, here in Monroe and West Monroe.
There's so many of them, man. I mean, when you talk about the Grant Taylors, then you got Matt Dickerson and Johnny Phillips, and
I can name 50 of them off the top of my head that have been huge influences in my life. Mm-hmm. So
there's that word influence. Maybe I could get you guys on, and we can talk about it after.
Man, my whole story is influence. You know, just the way that the Lord has put people in our lives.
Yep.
So.
You know what I've found through this series that I've done, and it's amazing how each one is so different. We all come back to the same conclusion, is that we can be the influence, but the impact is Christ. That's what it all comes back to in the very end, or, at the end of the podcast, it all comes back to Christ being the impact. We can influence. It's sort of like the parable of the sower. Or where the Bible talks about some sow, some water, somebody like your dad, somebody's got to be out there pulling the weeds, and but God gives the increase, and we don't save anybody. We present the gospel. We influence them with the gospel, and then they don't knock at my door. They don't knock at Hallie's door. They don't knock at Andrew's door. They knock at Christ's door. He's the one that opens it. We just try to usher them there.
That's right. You just release the God. And that's kind of what we talk about in Life Group a lot, is you don't have to have a theology degree, and you don't have to have a ministry with a sign on your door. you telling somebody about Jesus releases that gospel. It's amazing. And, just amazing how hearts can be changed and open to him. I mean, we've seen it happen time and time again. It's just incredible to watch. And it's nothing that anybody does. It's just the power of the gospel and Jesus Christ is all it is. So
that's exactly right. And I was talking to your dad and Jarrett, because both of them are expository preachers.
Yeah, they are.
And if anybody doesn't know what that means, they're telling the story. They're preaching the word of God. They're not preaching ideas. They're not preaching what made them mad that day. They didn't, because somebody didn't tithe. They're not preaching tithing because they need more money. They preach the word of God. They let the Bible and the word of God do the conviction, not Jarrett, not Bill. And I think when you do that, that's when, because your dad was telling me, he said, John, I think I've told you this story before when he was on last time, but I'll do it again. He said, he said, I'm sure this has happened to you. And Jarrett said this has happened to him several times. He said, I'll be preaching, and then the sermon will be over. Somebody come up to me and said, Pastor, when you said such and such and such, that spoke to me. And he said, he's standing there thinking, I didn't say that.
That's right.
And he said, I'll go back and listen and check my notes. He said, I didn't say that.
Yeah.
But because he was preaching the word, the Holy Spirit was able to move through that and speak to that person that was meant for them. It wasn't meant for Bill, wasn't meant for nobody else. It was meant for that person. And that, I love expository preaching, man. And I'm so appreciative that your dad does that.
And you see the work that the Spirit does in people.
And
then you see the sanctification. That's something we all deal with every day. We're all striving to be more holy like Jesus, but you just see like the works that people, I mean, I look at guys like that Hallie's had on her podcast and stories that they've had and just the life change, generational change that happened when somebody presented the gospel to them. And then they follow through by faith with their works and they produce fruit. And it's just amazing. So they get into the word, we've talked about Psalm 1, where, it talks about those who delight in his word are like the tree planted by the river and they produce fruit in their season. And that's just what we've seen in Monroe and West Monroe. And it's just in our lives and in our life groups' lives. And it's just really exciting. And
we, when you're doing ministry, you have people that have been in the church for 20, 30 years. And then you have people who feel like they can't speak up because they don't know if they fit in yet, because they just met the Lord, which I always say, this is just as much your church as it is ours, like this, we go to North Monroe, but we're part of the Big C church, but what's so cool is seeing people get their first Bible and not know these stories. And, it's changed the way we teach. I heard somebody recently say that Jesus's teaching ran along the ground and meaning that everyone could get something out of it. Now you can never get to the bottom of it, like the depth is there for as far as you want to go, but everyone can get something out of it. And, you talk about Bill and, all these other pastors that do such a good job. And, what I love about Bill is he is so good at putting things into perspective and it makes it relevant to you and you get it the way he spins it. And so in some ways he's making it new, but at the same time, he is not going to try to reinvent something. He's going to stick to the truth because you can't exhaust the gospel. And that word is alive and active. And it's been really impactful.
It has,
for lack of better words. And
one of the things she was talking about, kind of our mission. So we teach life group with some of our best friends, Andrew and Lauren Hinton, who are just awesome people and dedicated to spreading the gospel and teaching and that sort of thing. And we're really close to them. But when we start our class, we're like, we want to have our mission statement is to be a class for people that maybe haven't been to church in a while or have never been to church. And that's what made me think of it when you said people get their first Bible and stuff like that. That's exciting. But so what we do is we try to, like when we teach, it's like, we're going to explain this. We're not going to jump into something with a term that nobody understands. Like we're going to explain this to them And it's been fun to see how the Lord kind of put that mission statement on our heart and just see how he works through that. Because we have people in our class aged 20 to 45 probably, and then people that have been believers for 2 weeks and people that have been believers for 20 years, and it's just fun to be a part of it. I mean, it's like Dad said, like riding a tiger. That's kind of what it feels like. And there's hard, but
so I attend JJ and Corey Nim's life group on Sunday mornings. I have for now.
Oh, you Zoom in?
Several months. I Zoom in.
Yeah.
I attend I did last Monday for the first time, but I attend a Bible study there at the church on Mondays at 5 o'clock in the morning.
That's crazy.
And I do the Buck Commander Bible study on Thursdays. Yeah. And then tomorrow I'm going to Lake Okeechobee, or down off of Lake Okeechobee, to be with Todd Langdon and his pastor and men of his church. He and I are kind of become each other's Timothy and Paul.
Cool.
We're each other. We're the same one to back and forth. So I finally have an accountability partner here in Florida.
Cool.
And we met through the WFR men's retreat.
Wow.
That is crazy.
So JJ was and I was in North Carolina. He was in Florida, but JJ was my prayer partner. But JJ was Todd's table leader. And that's how, and through that, we just come to, there was, I think, 5 guys. There was 3 guys that attended from Florida the last WFR retreat, and there was 3 of us that teamed.
Wow.
So it's spreading.
Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Yeah. And I would love to come back. So I take both of you all been to retreats.
Yes, sir.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we'll wait a few weeks and give you guys time to get your breath. And because I've actually hung you out there a real long time. I'd love to come back, talk about the retreat and whatever else we can conjure up.
Sounds good.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
Thank you all so much. This was awesome, man.
Thank you. I feel like I've known you for 20 years.
Well, I tell you what, it's I can say this. What I podcast with you two guys, it's say you're like your dad. You guys are what you hear on that podcast. I can see that's who you are, and that's with me. What you see is what you get. I
see that.
People don't like it. I'm sorry. I am who God made me. And but anyway, I thank you all so much. And before we get out of here, hey everybody, if you go to forerunnerproductions.com. You can catch Chad forerunnerproductions.locals.com if you want to help support Chad and his film industry, the podcast, what we do here. If you want to do that, I normally have this up on the bottom, you guys, so I can read it because you think I'd have it memorized many times as I've said it. Hallie, Andrew, I cannot thank you guys enough. And if you want to put a bug in Dad's ear, Andrew, about using the green room the second week of December, if nothing's going on, maybe we can
I've got some pictures of him that he'll have to do whatever else.
And maybe what I'd like to do too is try to get you and Hallie in there and let's do something in person as well. If you guys are up to that.
We'd love that.
Thank you so much for having us.
You're welcome. Hang out. Don't leave just yet. I'm going to get us out of here. And if I can get my mouse to work. See, this is real, man. Everybody knows what I do here. I don't have anybody running my board. I am the board. Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah, we get that.
All right. I'll see you guys here in just a minute.